way back then in 2015, one of the things that I struggled with was articulating my value. You need to understand your value, right? For other people to see it, you need to understand it first. And by value, I mean, what is the value to your ideal client of you helping them get the result that they want to get, helping them get past the challenge, helping them get to where they want to get to? If they don't see the value in that, you could be the best storyteller in the world, but they're not going to buy.
Welcome to the Ideas on Stage podcast, your regular insight into leadership communication.
Susan, if someone has just clicked on this podcast and the only thing they know is that we will be talking about the business of stories, that's the title of the episode, can you tell them the reason why they should stay around and listen? What will they get from this conversation?
Stories are one of the most powerful things that connect us as humans. So if you are trying to communicate with people in a way that connects with them emotionally, that, you know, creates a bond, that builds trust, that builds authority, that shows them who you are, that shows them how they can help you, then stories is by far the best, most effective, most authentic way of talking about what you do, communicating your value that I have ever come across. It's completely changed my life and my business, which I know that we'll talk about. But I think for any business owner or anybody who's trying to attract more ideal clients into their world, if they can embrace and understand the power of storytelling and how to do it in a way that attracts people who are really great fit for you, then that is what they're going to take away from this conversation today.
Perfect. And I've been looking forward to this conversation for about 4 or 5 years because I don't know if you remember, Susan, but we connected, like, I think it was 2018 or 2019.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if you remember, but I went back to our conversations and I found out that we were supposed to record this episode in August 2020, so in the middle of the pandemic. And then for some reasons, we had to postpone it, and we postponed it to now. So a few years after that. So that's great. And so you said that storytelling, this approach to communicating your value ideas has changed your business, your life. I know that also in the book you talk about, by the way, your book, The Business of Stories, that I highly recommend to our listeners. Perfect. And you talk about an episode where, if I remember well, you spoke to 14 or 1,500 people, and you say that completely changed your business, your life. Can you tell us more about what happened there?
Yeah, so this would have been back in 2015, and I had started a community for women in business, which I know there's millions of them now, but actually back in 2015, Facebook groups weren't a big thing. They were quite new. In fact, I went off and had an all singing, all dancing website built with a forum and all of these things that I thought women would be able to connect and chat and learn, talk about business. And somebody said to me, why don't you start a free Facebook group? And I was like, what's that? So that's what I did. I started a Facebook group, and it actually filled up very quickly. There wasn't a lot around then. There wasn't a lot of spaces for women to connect and, you know, really talk about business and strategy and inspire each other and you know, really have that kind of support, because it can be very lonely when you're running your own business, right? So I called it The Business of Mums because I was particularly interested in talking to mums. I'd always worked for myself. I'd always worked from home. I was a single mum many, many years ago. Then I'd had my second daughter. So I really kind of felt that was a market that I could really help and offer some value in. The problem was that I didn't really know what that value was. I didn't really know what my thing was, if you like, back then. I just felt that I did have stuff to offer, and that if I brought people together and I listened to their challenges, if I listened to what it was that they really wanted support with, what they needed help with, that I would find my role, right? I would find my thing of value. I would find what I could offer them. So I built up this community. I had lots of experts coming in doing sessions. We didn't have lives and stuff like that then. It was all just, uploading stuff. I did interviews. I did an interview every month with, somebody started their own business, and it was going great. But it wasn't really a business, right? It was a group. It was a busy, engaged group. And even though I was putting out some posts saying, hey, I do coaching, I can help you guys, I can help you, set up your business or see what you need. And people weren't really buying because I wasn't clear. I wasn't clear on who my ideal client was. I wasn't really able to articulate my value the way that I teach people how to do now. So I was struggling. I was really struggling to make it a business. So I did all the things that I thought you had to do when you wanted to market your business. I started doing courses on SEO. I was thinking, oh, it's I've got I haven't got the right keywords. Or I even went to a marketing agency and paid them a stupid amount of money to do some marketing for me. But I realize now, looking back, that wasn't the problem. I had people coming in. Marketing wasn't the problem. The problem was that I wasn't really connecting with them. I wasn't, they didn't really know why. They just thought it's a great place to hang out. We're getting loads of free resources. It's lovely, but they didn't really know the value of working with me. And I was actually sat at my kitchen table one evening with a very large glass of wine, and I got quite tearful. And I said to my husband, the group is going well, but I haven't got a business. Like, I'm kidding myself here. This is actually costing me money now to keep this going. Like, I need to work out what I need to do. I need to do something different. What I'm doing is not working. Maybe I need to close it down. Maybe this isn't the thing for me. Maybe I'm not cut out for business. Like, I'd always worked for myself, but I'd never really, scaled something. I was more freelancer, charging for my time for money. So I went to bed that night thinking, I've got to do something different. I just don't know what it is. Went to bed. I'm a great believer in if you have got a question, like depositing it in your brain the night before, go to bed, go to sleep. And I woke up in the morning and I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go into the group and I'll just be really honest. I'll tell them who I am. I'll tell them about my story. I'll share my journey with them and why I've created the group and what the vision is for the group and everything else. So that's what I did. And because I'd always loved writing. I loved English at school. I loved, reading stories to my kids. Like, I'd always loved storytelling. But at that time, I didn't really, make the connection with that's what I needed to do. But I thought I need to go in and tell people who I am. So I went into the group again. I had to write it all out. But I wrote out my story. And actually, when I started to write what I thought was going to be quite a short thing, it actually turned into this has been my journey. It wasn't some story fit for a Hollywood blockbuster, right? I've just had a normal life like everybody else with all its ups and downs. But I was just very honest about, those ups and downs, what had got me through the tough times. I talked about, working in media and working for celebrities was great. But the downside of that is that I had a small child at home that was being looked after by somebody else, and that guilt and that, juggling all of those things. I talked about losing everything in the property market crash, right, in 2008. I had to build up a property portfolio that I thought, this is mine and my daughter's future. Lost everything in the property market crash. And I talked about that impact on my health, that stress of being a single mum. I was a single mum at the time, and trying to run a business and losing everything, in the property market crash. So I just talked about that journey. I talked about why I'd set up this group and how I wanted to connect with other women, and, what I really hoped that it would look like, and how we would all, connect and support each other. And I also said that, where I wanted the group to go, like kind of my vision for it. I put some pictures in to bring it all to life, put little subheadings in, I like, even in my book, right, everything's all in little sections with little subheadings. I like to break stuff up, make everything bite-sized, stuck some photos in, and I sent it out to 1,500 women. And then I had a moment of panic. Then I thought, was that the right thing to do? Like, I'm no rags to riches. Like, if I was at that point, I wasn't even earning any money, right? So I thought, what if people read this and think, oh, I'm out of here? Like, this woman that's put this group together isn't even making any income. She hasn't even got a business, So I had all of those doubts started going through my head. And then there was a little ping on my computer, and it was a message from somebody. And I opened up the message, and she said, "Thank you so much for sharing that story. Like, it really resonates with me. And actually, I can really relate to it because, I've had times in my life where I've really struggled." And so she started to tell me a little bit about her story. And as I was reading it, there was another ping, and another message came through, and then another one. And all of these messages started coming through, and these women were messaging me and saying, thank you for sharing. They were telling me how my story related to their story, how they really resonated with it. They started saying that they felt much more connected to me now, and they had no idea. And people were telling me my journey was inspiring. And people started asking me how they could work with me. And that blew me away. That actually, by just being very real and honest and open and transparent about, this roller coaster ride that anyone who's got their own business understands, right? It's not a straight path, and it's good days and bad days, and but when we talk about that, and when we're very honest about that, people can connect with us. People can really relate to it. It makes them see, oh, okay, I'm going through a tough time now, but this is just part of the journey. This is just part of the process. I can see other people have been through it and come out the other side. So then they see what's possible for them, right? That's why stories are inspiring. Your stories help other people see what is possible for them. And so in the following 6 weeks, I onboarded, I think, 7 or 8 clients, having gone almost 12 months without one. I mean, a lot of that time was building it up and getting it going, but it just blew me away that actually all I'd really done was share my story. But what I'd done is invite people to get to know me, to get to understand, what I'm about, what I stand for, and what I want for them. And that was the missing piece. Once I realized how powerful that was, and I was able to share more stories, and then I started coaching those women on how to share their story. And eventually, about a year later, the penny really dropped that this is what I should be doing. And the business of mums became the business of stories.
I've got a couple of follow-up questions. And one is that you said the one comment, one message that you received was from someone who said, "Oh, your journey is so inspiring." And I also know in the book you say that everyone has an inspiring story to tell. And I'm pretty sure, Susan, that some of your clients tell you, "Oh, yeah, great, I love that, but I don't have an inspiring story to tell." What's your answer to that?
You do. And I hear it all the time, all the time. I have a 12-month group program, and people come into that all the time at the beginning telling me, they either say, I don't think my story is very exciting, I don't think it's very interesting, or they say, I think I've just got the one story, like how I started, the challenge I had and how I sorted it out, and what I now do. Like, what other stories do I share? And probably 4 weeks into the program, they're like, oh my God, what do I do with all these stories? I've got hundreds of them, because we all have an endless supply of stories. We just don't know necessarily where to look for them, how to find them, what to do with them, how to share them. But going back to having an inspiring story, I've never come across anybody whose story wasn't inspiring. And here's why. You have overcome 100% of the challenges that you have faced on this journey of yours. I don't know what that journey looks like, but what I do know is that you have overcome every single challenge and barrier that you have faced, right? Because you're here today, now, listening to this. So you've overcome them all. Some of them were hard, right? Really, really tough. Some of them were, some of them, if you could go back in time, you would change. But they're all experiences that make you who you are now, right? Who you have become today. They are also all the things that you bring to what you do. So I talk to people all the time who say, well, I'm an XYZ, and there's millions of us. There's loads of people who do what I do. Like, how am I any different? You are completely unique, because your life journey, your experiences, your insights, your perspective, all the things you've done, your ideas, your values, your passion, everything, you bring a completely unique mix and blend to the way that you do what you do. So it doesn't matter how many other people do what you do, they won't do it the way that you do it, right? And everybody's story is interesting to other people. It always is. I know that some people don't think theirs is. I didn't think mine was, when I put it out. And all my life, people have called me inspiring, and I've never really understood why. But I tell you what I think it is. I think it's just because I share it. I tell people this is the journey that I've been on, and this is how I got through those tough times. This is what kept me going, this is how I felt, but this is how I managed to change that feeling so that I could do that thing anyway. And that's what people find inspiring. It's not even necessarily the series of events that happened. It's just the fact that you got through it, that you found a way through, that you took on that challenge, or you walked away from something that was toxic or not good for you, You've all your life, you've made decisions, you've turned directions, you've made pivots, you've, made choices, all of these things that have, and these are where all your stories are, by the way, all of those things that have happened to you that have brought you here today, doing what you now do as the person that you now are. That journey is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Have you heard of the Humans of New York?
No.
Right, there's a guy in New York, and a few years ago, he was a photographer, and he started literally stopping people in the street in New York and saying, can I take your picture? And it was a blog. It started as a blog, and he would take their picture, and it would just be everyday people going about their business, the woman in the coffee shop, somebody walking down the road. And he would take their picture, and then he would just ask them, like, just tell me a little bit about you. Just tell me a little bit about your story. And he would literally in this blog put maybe a paragraph or 2 paragraphs about the person in the picture. That blog blew up to hundreds of thousands of people reading it. It became a book. I believe it's now on, like, you can find it on YouTube. Like, it's massive, absolutely massive. And that's all it is. It's everyday people story. And because it's interesting, right? It's always interesting. So there is nobody who hasn't got an interesting, inspiring story.
And I think what also, and you mentioned it, but to emphasize it again, what makes it interesting and even inspiring is not only the fact that you've overcome certain challenges, but you've also overcome a specific challenge, which is the challenge of having the courage to be vulnerable enough to share the story in the first place. You do talk about the power of vulnerability in your book. And also, so you said that some people think they have no story to tell, others maybe think they just have one story, which is how they ended up doing what they do. But you say there are many other stories. In the book, you summarize them into three types of stories: personal stories, business stories, and customer stories. Again, for those who haven't read the book at a high level, can we talk about these three
Yeah.
types of stories?
Yeah. So the business, the personal story, everything always starts for me with the personal story, like who you are. Because whatever you do, whatever business you do, whoever you're going to attract to you, it's got to be a good fit for you personally, what you want, who you are, what you stand for. So those personal stories are the stories that let people see who you are so that they can see if they're a good fit for you. If all you ever do is talk about what you do and how you do it, and it's what you're selling right now, people don't get to know who you are. Like, do we connect? Do I like you? Do I trust you? Do I feel like I would like to work with you, hang out with you, have you guide me through this bit of my journey that I need help with? So that your personal stories are all of those things I mentioned before, right? Those experiences, those events, those conversations, those moments along the journey that were significant or defining or, important for some reason. And there are often moments that when you look back, you didn't know at the time they were defining moments, right? So like a story, a defining moment story could be the one that I said, I was sat at the kitchen table, drinking my glass of wine, telling my husband that I didn't have a business, right? That's a moment in my journey. So even though I talked about this whole time from, starting the group right through to today, where I'm at today, but I actually took you to a very specific moment along that journey. So it's those type of personal stories, that just show people who you are. And I often get people say, oh, but I'm B2B, or, I don't want to be seen as unprofessional, or, there's a lot of stuff that we tell ourselves that we think, oh, I don't know if I should be sharing personal stuff. People buy from people. They always have, and they always will. People love personal stories. They love to get to know people. Like when I say personal stories, I'm not talking about, you don't have to share anything you don't want to share, right? I'm not saying you've got to tell everybody your deepest, darkest secrets or share anything that you're uncomfortable sharing. It's not about that at all. It's about inviting people in, let them get to know you, let them get a little glimpse of, who you are, what makes you tick, that journey you've been on, what's important to you, all of those things. So it's human connecting with another human. Richard Branson has way more followers than Virgin the brand, right? Because we follow people. We want to connect with people. So there are your personal stories. Then there's your business story, which there'll be overlap, of course, because your journey, your personal journey is also going to be very intertwined with your business journey. But the business story is just where we really focus on. So what does my business stand for? Like, who is it for? Why does it exist? What problem does it exist to solve? What does it stand for? What does it believe? Like, businesses and brands don't just pop up from nowhere. There's always been a journey, and that journey is full of stories. And there's lots of exercises in the book that help people to start to think about oh, how do I communicate that in a story? How do I let people know what my business stands for or what it exists to do? All of those things. So the business story is just where we're kind of turning that focus a bit more on the actual business journey, because when somebody's going to invest in you, they want to know that there's a bit of a journey there, right? There's something's led you here doing what you now do. And you might have your process or your framework, or you're like, I've got my, framework in my book, my process that I take people through. That's all part of your business journey, right? That your experience and your insights have helped you put this methodology or whatever it is together. So you've got all the kind of business things, stories that you can share. And then we come to your customer story, which is super, super important, right? It's so critical to really understand your customer story. And by that, I mean, what is their story? What is going on for them right now? How are they feeling? How are they thinking? I know a lot of marketers get very excited about things like, what do they drive and what do they read and where do they eat and all of those things. And I can see that can be helpful to know depending on what you do. But what I'm interested in is their story, right? What is going on for them? Where are they now? And where are they trying to get to? What's keeping them stuck? What do they need help with? What is the challenge that they need to overcome right now to be the person they want to be, to have the life or the health or the wealth or the, relationship or whatever it is? We need to understand their story to understand where we fit into it, right? What our role is in their story. Because then we can put all of those stories together, right? And I've got a little Venn diagram and they all overlap, right? And then there's all the little intersections. And this is where we start to connect all of those stories and we start to see, oh, okay, these things in my story are the things that are going to really resonate with my audience because they're feeling the same right now, or they're facing a very similar challenge. You might not have the same story, but there'll be little golden threads that connect, right? Your story, your business story, and your customer story. And when we get to the middle of that Venn diagram, right in the middle is what I call the sweet spot, where you absolutely understand who your customer is, what is going on for them right now, and you know what stories will resonate with them. You know what stories to share. You know how to tell the right story to the right person at the right time in their journey so that you attract more of the clients into your business that are a really good fit for you. And that's how those three main types of stories work together really, really well.
Before we continue with this episode, I just want to share a few resources that I think will be super useful for you. The first one is check out either my book, Confident Presenter, or my colleague Phil Wakenall's book, Business Presentation Revolution, or both. These are books for business owners and leaders who want to take their presentation skills to a higher level. To make the most of the books, take the Confident Presenter Scorecard, which is an online tool that allows you to assess your presentation skills for free in less than 3 minutes. And then also, at the moment, I'm running a series of free presentation skills web classes, and I'd love to see you there. The links are in the show notes. Now let's go back to the episode. And to get to the sweet spot, a very important thing we need to do, you say in your book, and it's something that also I had learned from Donald Miller. I know you know him, building a story brand. He also talks about the importance of the fact that when you tell a story, especially when we're talking about business stories, customer stories, you are not the hero of the story.
Yes.
Again, for those who know nothing about this concept and even Donald Miller, you are not the hero of the story. What does that mean?
It's interesting. And it's one of the reasons I wrote my book, actually, was because I absolutely love Donald Miller. I love building story brand. I was a certified story brand guide for a few years. I flew out to Nashville. I trained with them. And the framework, their framework is brilliant, but it focuses 100% on the customer story. And what I found was that as I was working with people is that they kept getting messages like, nobody cares about your story, right? It's all about the customer. Nobody wants to know about you, right? They just want to know how you're going to help them. But I don't find that to be true, right? There has to be a balance. We have to let people get to know who we are. So, but the problem was because they'd heard this message, right? You're not the hero of your story. Your customer is the hero of the story. So then the questions I were getting was, well, how do I share my story then and not be the hero? How do I talk about me and not be the hero? And it's one of the reasons really, like I say, that I realized that I had to create my own framework, and I wrote my book. And what it is, the role that you need to play in your customer's story is the guide, right? So Luke Skywalker had Yoda, right? When you think about a lot of the films that you've watched and you love, there's a guide, there's a wise, somebody, not necessarily Yoda, but there's somebody there that's helping you, that's supporting you, that's showing you what you can do, that's showing you what's possible, that keeps you on track. Same as having a coach, right? That's just helping you find the answers, do what you need to do, get to where you need to get to. So when you position yourself as that guide that has walked that walk, I've got the map, I've got the route, I know the way, I can take you by the hand, I can show you, I've got the steps, all right? I know how to get you from where you are to where you want to be. When you realize that that's your role in their story, you can then share any story as the guide, right? Because we want to know who our guide is. We want to know that this person that's going to take us off on this journey, that's going to have its ups and downs, and and it doesn't matter what you do, it's still the same, right? You're still helping people get through some kind of challenge, get to where they want to get to, get whatever it is they desire, they want, whatever it is in their life that you're going to help them get. You're playing the role of that guide. So when you share a story about you, you've got your ideal client in mind. You're sharing that story, and you're sharing the learning or the insight or how you were feeling, because you know that your ideal client is going to relate to that feeling. So you share your story, but you're sharing it from the position of, this is why I can guide you. This is why I know that I can help you, because I've been through this, or I've overcome this challenge, or I know what it's like to feel like this. I get you. I see you, I've been where you are now, or I've helped other people who are where you are now. So we can share the stories, understanding it's not about us. It's showing them that we can help them do what they want to do, have what they want to have, achieve what they want to achieve. So it's just that switch in, like you said, not thinking about I'm telling the story because I'm the hero. I'm telling a story so that you can see that I'm a good guide, and for you, I can show you how to get to where you want to get to.
Yeah. So also,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The intention behind
Yes.
why you are telling the story is important. And Susan,
100%.
so far, we've been talking about the idea that if you want to, and of course, thinking about entrepreneurs, business owners, business leaders, they do want to be able to articulate who they are and the value that they offer. The best way to do that is through storytelling. Instead, in your experience, what do most people do? Can we talk about some of the common mistakes that you see?
For a lot of business owners, they're very, very good at what they do. It's their passion. They love it. They're probably always learning and getting better and better at what they do. They've got loads of experiences. They're working with clients. They might have lots of tools that they use. And the problem is that, first of all, they get that curse of knowledge, right? They're so they know so much about their topic. They actually find it very hard to keep it simple, have a really nice, simple core message that really lands with their ideal client. They often think that they know their ideal client really well. They often think that, this is the problem and this is how they're feeling and this is what they want. But actually, quite often when I work with clients and we look at their ideal customers and we start to dive into their stories, that's not quite right. That's sometimes there's a mismatch there. And actually what the thing they're talking about, the problem or the desire or the fear or isn't actually completely 100% matching up with what the customer is experiencing. So that's can be a big mistake. And also, I think that for a lot of business owners, they're not marketers, and yet they have to put this marketing hat on. And they sit there with a blank screen and they think, oh, I've got to write a post, or I've got to, write a sales page, or I've got to write an email, and I've got to sell this program that I'm trying to sell, and I've got to tell people what's in it, and I've got to do the features and the benefits, and I've got to tell them how much it is, and I've got to not sound salesy, and and it's a real struggle. And on top of that, I've got to try and get across to them why they should work with me and why I'm different to everybody else. And that's overwhelming, and that can be really, really tough. And actually what I help people do is it can be much simpler than that. It really can just be those little stories that can help people really understand who you are, that journey that you've been on, what you can help them do, how you do it, but in a way that doesn't ever feel salesy. Because if you're being actually very just authentic, true to who you are, if you really come across as open and honest and share the ups and downs and share those stories, and the more people read your stories and relate to the things that you've done, the feelings that you've experienced and all of those things, the more they will feel connected to you, the more they'll be open to, oh, okay, like, actually, I would be interested to find out what you do and how you do it. I would like to look at your program, which is exactly what happened to me, right? I told my story, and then people literally turned around and said, so how do we work with you? What do you do exactly? Because I'd made the connection first. And that's the power of storytelling, is that the stories make the connection first. We feel connected to the person. Then we're ready to look at what they do and how they do it, and if that's a good fit for us too. So I've heard the saying that before people buy from you, they need to buy into you. Your stories might be funny, or you might be a very spiritual person, or you might be an introvert and you talk about being an introvert, whatever. It's just helping people see, oh, they would be a really good fit for me.
And Susan, I have to say, this is something that I've experienced with you, because I don't know if you know, but I'm one of your subscribers of your newsletter.
Right.
And I can see how you do it, because you do lead your content with through storytelling, which is great. And I can see in practice how it can solve the big challenge that many of us face, which is, again, we want to articulate who we are, what we do, how we can help others, but then we feel that we want to make sure that that doesn't appear forced or awkward or salesy. And you do it very well with, for example, with your newsletter. And also,
Thank you.
some of the mistakes you mentioned are very much connected to what we see in our space when it comes to presenting, public speaking. For example, you talked
Sure.
about the course of knowledge. That's the number
Yes.
one problem in communication, like in any communication context. Also, you said that many people find it hard to simplify the message. Again, that's another big problem that we see. You said that sometimes we think that we know what the audience wants. Often the audience or our clients want something else. And again, that's another very big problem when it comes to presenting and public speaking. One thing in particular that you talk about in the book if I think about the idea of simplifying your message, is a piece of advice you give is that we need to avoid corporate speak in storytelling. Can you tell me more about this?
I work with a lot of people who come out of corporate and, they've kind of been, they're so used to all the jargon, all the corporate speak, all the, they think that because that's the way that people speak in their space, that's what they should be doing. And I sometimes have clients push back a little bit, especially when I used to do a lot more messaging and copywriting than I do now. And I used to often have people push back and say, oh, but that's the lingo that we use in my business. And I used to say, well, how refreshing then would it be if somebody came along and they didn't use all the cliches and they didn't use all the jargon and they didn't use all the words that actually a lot of people don't even really understand, right? But nobody's going to admit that. If you actually really think about your messaging and make it really simple in everyday language, but making sure it really lands with the person, like emotionally, like it makes them feel, oh, like they really get me. They really, understand the problem. Sometimes you can articulate the problem even better than they can, right? Because they're in their head and they're confused and they're feeling overwhelmed or frustrated or whatever it is. And when somebody actually says something in a way that makes them think, oh, that is it, actually, like you've really hit the nail on the head. I often get replies to my emails from people saying, like, you've just totally said what I've had in my head, but I've never been able to articulate. You've just said it. I really discourage people from using that kind of jargon and, just I try to find ways to say something different to how everybody else is saying. I find coaches a lot, this happens. They kind of get into this familiar way of talking about what they do. And they forget over time that most people don't really know what they mean, when they're talking about what they help people do. They talk about, reconnecting with yourself or whatever it is. And actually, most people are like, what does that even mean? So it really is about trying to make it very simple, not because people are stupid, but because we're busy, our attention's being pulled in all directions. And when somebody says something very simply that just lands very powerfully with us, then we listen, right? Then we sit up, then we're like, oh, never actually heard it put like that before, but that's exactly it. So yeah, I help a lot of people who come out of corporate to actually find their voice and remember like who they are, and get across who they are rather than be representing a organization, right? Or having to use all of that corporate speak. So it really is just about being who you are and coming across in a way that will resonate with the right people, right? That's important. We don't just want anyone and everyone. We want people who are a really, really good fit for us. And that's again why storytelling is so powerful, because we can use stories to help people see that we're a good fit for them. But the more we do that, the more we can just be who we are, which is easier, right, than trying to be something we're not. We can forget about the marketing, stuff that we think we've got to get right and learn and have all these slick sales pages and everything, and actually just be really true to who we are and share stories that help people connect with us.
Yeah, when it comes to using simple language, again, I agree with you, Susan. It's not about oversimplifying your message or your ideas. It's about finding and using language that everyone in your specific audience can understand. So your ideas, your concepts may be complex,
Yes.
they may be technical, but the way you articulate them should never be.
Yes.
And there's another, so before you said that often there are there's a lot of stuff that we tell ourselves. And so we were talking about personal stories, business stories, customer stories, but you say in your book that the most important story is the story you tell yourself.
Yes.
Tell me more.
again, I come across so many people who are amazing at what they do. They're so talented and they change lives, because the work that you do is not just about the immediate results somebody get, it's the knock-on effect, right? People are happier or healthier or living a better life, being a better person, whatever it is. So I meet all the time, I meet these people who are amazing at that, but they hold back, right? They feel resistance to sharing stories because there's something going on in their head. There's something that's telling them, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to be pushy. I don't want people to judge me. I don't want people to think I'm bragging or boasting or talking about myself too much. Or, there's all of these are all stories in our head. And I could sit here all day long and tell you how to craft stories and share stories and how powerful stories are. But if you've got a story going on in your head that you're not interesting or it's wrong to be, that confident, or it's wrong to talk about yourself too much. And these often go back to things we hear as a kid, right? Sit down, be quiet, don't be too confident, don't be bossy, don't be the center of attention. We often have these messages from childhood that make us think that maybe it's not right to stand up and share stories, thinking that people would be interested in our lives and our stories. So one of the first things I do when I work with clients is check in with that story in their head, because like I said, it's no good me telling you how to share stories if something is actually going to hold you back and stop you putting out there. And I worked with a client one time that used to write these fabulous stories and then never post them, never publish them, because there was just too much resistance, too much, the story in her head wasn't a good one. It wasn't serving her. So we really did some work on that. And there's some things in the book to help people with that. But it's just about, it's about noticing that story, that it's not helpful, it's not serving you, it's not helping you show up and be the person you want to be. And most importantly, be there for your clients, right? Because if you're hiding away and you don't want to stand up and say, hey, this is me and this is my journey and this is my story, if you don't do that, they're not going to find you, and then you can't help them. So you're not serving anybody by staying back, holding back, never pushing that publish button. So we've got to really check in with that story in our head. We've got to make sure it's a good one. And if it's not, there's some simple things that I talk about in the book, how to change that story in your head. But really the most effective way of all, I think, is to really focus on the person you are showing up for, right? You're not showing up for your ex-boss or people that you used to work with, or your family or your friends or any other people that you're worrying will read your posts or your emails. You're writing those posts and those emails, you're writing those stories, you're sharing your journey for the very specific person that really, really needs your help right now. And if you don't show up, then they're not going to find you and they're not going to get your help. And you don't get to make the difference and the impact that you want to make in the world, right? So we need to get the story in our own head right so that we can show up the way we need to show up to make the difference we want to make to the people that we work with. We can't let that story get in the way.
That's helpful. And it also resonates a lot with me, Susan. And a couple of final questions. Let's talk about AI, artificial intelligence. Just out of curiosity, looking ahead, if you think about the future of storytelling in an area where we've got these super powerful technology that can do a lot of things for us, what are your thoughts?
AI is here to stay, right? It is going to be a big part. And who knows what it will look like in, 6 months, never mind 6 years. And it's absolutely got its place. And I think that it's great for people. It's great for ideation. It's great for, getting some prompts in there and kind of, just coming up with ideas. I think it's great for people who are maybe not confident writers and would like to, put what they've written into AI to get some help with, crafting it. However, no AI bot will ever be able to stand in your shoes and go back to your journey and really understand what you were going through and what you were thinking and how you felt and what got you through it and what you took from it and all of those things, right? No AI bot can tell your story. You've absolutely got to do that. But what AI can absolutely help you do is then craft that story, write that story in a way that's going to be really engaging and make sure that it grabs attention and all the things that we want the story to do. But it will never, ever be able to, like, it's not an emotional thing, right? And it's never going to be able to really understand where you've been and what you've been through and how you've overcome it and all those feelings and emotions and everything that are part of that journey. But I absolutely think it's a phenomenal tool for then crafting those stories and making sure that they are engaging enough that people will read them, because that's the thing, is you could have great stories, but we need people to see them, we need them to grab their attention, we need to keep them engaged, and we need them to do what we want the story to do, right? Because this is storytelling in business, and this is about calling people to action at the end, right? We touched a little bit before about being salesy, right? I always put a call to action at the end of every single story, and it's not shoehorned in and they and now that I've told you that story, I'm going to sell you some stuff, right? We don't do it like that. But absolutely, if your story has connected with somebody and really inspired them and made them see what's possible for them, then we want to be showing them how we can help them get to where they want to get to. So yeah, but going back to AI, yes, absolutely. I think it's amazing, but I don't think it's ever going to replace the need for you to unpack your own story.
Yeah, we see in the same way, Susan. I also believe that AI is a phenomenal tool,
Mhm.
but it's AI plus human.
Yeah.
If it's just AI, something crucial is missing. So, but AI plus human, it's a
Yes.
very powerful
Yeah.
combination.
Yeah.
And if you think about what we've talked about today, the business of stories, business storytelling, lots of ideas, and there are many others in your book. Beyond your own book, which again I recommend, The Business of Stories, to our listeners, are there any other books that you would suggest?
Um, there is obviously Building a Story Brand, which we mentioned, which is a great book, and I've had lots of people who said they've read that book and then they've read my book, and that's really helped kind of cement the learning and take the framework to the next level. So I definitely reckon that it's worth a read. Another book I mention in my book is Soundtracks by John Acuff, which again is about that story in your head. So if that is something, where you definitely feel like you need to change that soundtrack, as he refers to it, that's running in your head, that is a great book. And another one that I mentioned in the book is Superfans by Pat Flynn. And that is all about, building your tribe, building communities, building, if we can, rather than just think about what we do, if we think about, like, if what you do was a movement, what would that movement be? Like, is there a community there? Is there, a tribe there that you can start to build around this, what people want or what they're moving away from or whatever it is that you help them do? So yeah, that is a really great book too.
I'll definitely check it out, because that, from a business perspective, building a community, a
Mm.
movement is super important. Because I'm just thinking out loud, Susan, but I think that yes, you can have a fantastic and inspiring, we started with the idea, an inspiring story
Mm.
to tell, but then if you tell that story to no one, if
Yeah,
there is no community, no movement behind you,
yeah.
then it's not going to have the same impact. Perfect. So thank you for sharing those books. And if someone would like to say hi or learn more about you, what you do, where should they go? Where do they find you?
On social media, I'm Susan Payton UK. So Facebook and LinkedIn, Susan Payton UK. My website is thebusinessofstories.com. You can email me, susan@thebusinessofstories.com. But yeah, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn pretty much every day. So you can come and connect with me there.
Okay, perfect. We're going to include all the links in the
Yeah.
show notes. And let's finish with these, Susan. Is there a question I didn't ask you that you would have hoped for me to ask? Have I missed something? Again, if you think about everything we've talked about, this topic in general, all the ideas in your book, have I missed something important?
I think the only thing is something I brought up right at the beginning, which was that way back then in 2015, one of the things that I struggled with was articulating my value. And it is part of my process, is that you need to understand your value, right? For other people to see it, you need to understand it first. And by value, I mean, what is the value to your ideal client of you helping them get the result that they want to get, helping them get past the challenge, helping them get to where they want to get to? If they don't see the value in that, you could be the best storyteller in the world, but they're not going to buy, right? So part of the process that I take people through is to also be able to stand in that value, to really understand what is that difference that I make, right? What is that impact that I have? And it doesn't to millions of people, right? You could work with 2 clients a month, but it's the difference that you're making. How are you changing their story? How are you helping them get the happy ever after that they want? Right? That's where the value is. So if we only talk about what we do and how it works and how much it costs, and we don't really share stories that help the client see the value of actually what is that transformation? What am I going to have that I don't have now? What does success look like? I don't assume that people know that, because actually they might have never experienced it. Right? If they're wherever they are here struggling now, they might not even really have a clear picture of what success looks like, what you can help them do. So there is definitely the value piece in there is a really important part of the process, and understanding your value and understanding how to share that value in a way that helps people see what it is an essential part of the process.
Thank you, Susan. As I said at the beginning, I've been waiting for a few years for this conversation. It was worth it.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that our listeners have gained a lot of insights as well. Again, if you, for everyone, if you want to learn more, check out Susan's book, The Business of Stories. Highly recommend it. You mentioned, for example, that there are many exercises in your book. There's one, and we're going to close with this. It's not a question, it's just a comment. There's one I loved, which is, if I remember well, Susan, something like write a story, write a letter to your business.
Yeah.
And you give the example of Kobe Bryant
Yes.
when he wrote a letter to basketball, dear basketball, when he retired. I love that exercise. So thank you again. Thank you for sharing your ideas. Thank you for sharing your stories, for writing the book. And let's keep in touch. All the very best.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Ideas on Stage podcast, there are many more you might like, so please subscribe, leave us a review, and tell us what you think. You can find many more ideas on business communication at ideasonstage.com or by searching for Ideas on Stage on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and goodbye for now.